a broad belt of oaks extends directly across the crest on both sides of the Sudley road, in which, during the battle, the hostile forces contended for the mastery. General B, with a soldier's eye to the situation, skilfully disposed his forces. His 2 brigades on either side of Imboden's battery, which he had borrowed from his neighboring reserve, Jackson's brigade, were placed in a small depression of the plateau in advance of the Henry House, whence he had a full view of the contest on the opposite height across the valley of Young's Branch. Opening with his artillery upon the Federal batteries, he answered Evans' request by advising him to withdraw to his own position on the height. But Evans, full of the spirit that would not retreat, renewed his appeal that the forces in rear would come to help him hold his ground. The newly arrived forces had given the Federals such superiority at this point as to dwarf Evans's means of resistance, and General B, generously yielding his own better judgment to Evans's persistence, led the 2 brigades across the valley under the fire of the enemy's artillery, and threw them into action. 1 regiment in the copse held by Colonel Evans, 2 along a fence on the right, and 2 under General Bartow on the prolonged right of this line, but extended forward at a right angle, and along the edge of a wood, not more than 100 yards from that held by the enemy's left, where the contest at short range became sharp and deadly, bringing many casualties to both sides. The Federal infantry, though still in superior numbers, failed to make any headway against this sturdy van, notwithstanding B's whole line was hammered also by the enemy's powerful batteries, until Heintzelman's division of 2 strong brigades, arriving from Sudley Ford, extended the fire on the Federal right, while its battery of 6 10-pounder rifled guns took an immediately effective part from a position behind the Sudley road. Against these odds, the Confederate force was still endeavoring to hold its ground, when a new enemy came into the field upon its right. Major Wheat, with characteristic daring and restlessness, had crossed Bull Run alone by a small ford above the stone bridge, in order to reconnoiter, when he and Evans had first moved to the left, and, falling on some Federal scouts, had shouted a taunting defiance and withdrawn, not, however, without his place of crossing having been observed. This disclosure was now utilized by W. T. Sherman's and Keyes's brigade of Tyler's division. Crossing at this point, they appeared over the high bank of the stream and moved into position on the Federal left. There was no choice now for B but to retire, a movement, however, to be accomplished under different circumstances than when urged by him upon Evans. The 3 leaders endeavored to preserve the steadiness of the ranks as they withdrew over the open fields, aided by the fire of Imboden's guns on the plateau and the retiring howitzers, but the troops were thrown into confusion, and the greater part soon fell into rout across Young's Branch and around the base of the height in the rear of the stone bridge. Meanwhile, in rear of Mitchell's Ford, I had been waiting with General Johnston for the sound of conflict to open in the quarter of Centreville upon the Federal left flank and rear, making allowance, however, for the delays possible to commands unused to battle, when I was chagrined to hear from General D. R. Jones that, while he had been long ready for the movement upon Centreville, General Ewell had not come up to form on his right, though he had sent him between 7 and 8 o'clock a copy of his own order, which recited that Ewell had been already ordered to begin the movement. I dispatched an immediate order to Ewell to advance, but within a quarter of an hour, just as I received a dispatch from him informing me that he had received no order to advance in the morning, the firing on the left began to increase so intensely as to indicate a severe attack, whereupon General Johnston said that he would go personally to that quarter. After weighing attentively the firing, which seemed rapidly and heavily increasing, it appeared to me that the troops on the right would be unable to get into position before the Federal offensive should have made too much progress on our left, and that it would be better to abandon it altogether. maintaining only a strong demonstration so as to detain the enemy in front of our right and center, and hurry up all available reinforcements, including the reserves that were to have moved upon Centreville, to our left, and fight the battle out in that quarter. Communicating this view to General Johnston, who approved it, giving his advice, as he said, for what it was worth, as he was not acquainted with the country, I ordered Ewell, Jones, and Longstreet to make a strong demonstration all along their front on the other side of the run, and ordered the reserves below our position, Holmes's brigade with 6 guns, and Early's brigade, also 2 regiments of Bonham's brigade near at hand, to move swiftly to the left. General Johnston and I now set out at full speed for the point of conflict. We arrived there just as B's troops, after giving way, were fleeing in disorder behind the height in rear of the stone bridge. They had come around between the base of the hill and the stone bridge into a shallow ravine, which ran up to a point on the crest where Jackson had already formed his brigade along the edge of the woods. We found the commanders resolutely stemming the further flight of the routed forces, but vainly endeavoring to restore order, and our own efforts were as futile. Every segment of line we succeeded in forming was again dissolved while another was being formed. More than 2,000 men were shouting each some suggestion to his neighbor, their voices mingling with the noise of the shells hurtling through the trees overhead, and all word of command drowned in the confusion and uproar. It was at this moment that General B used the famous expression, "Look at Jackson's brigade. It stands there like a stone wall," a name that passed from the brigade to its immortal commander. The disorder seemed irretrievable, but happily the thought came to me that if their colors were planted out to the front, the men might rally on them, and I gave the order to carry the standards forward some 40 yards, which was promptly executed by the regimental officers, thus drawing the common eye of the troops. They now received easily the orders to advance and form on the line of their colors, which they obeyed with a general movement. And as General Johnston and myself rode forward shortly after with the colors of the 4th Alabama by our side, the line that had fought all morning and had fled, routed and disordered, now advanced again into position as steadily as veterans. The 4th Alabama had previously lost all its field officers, and noticing Colonel S.R. Gist, an aide to General B, a young man whom I had known as Adjutant General of South Carolina, and whom I greatly esteemed, I presented him as an able and brave commander to the stricken regiment, who cheered their new leader, and maintained under him, to the end of the day, their previous gallant behavior. We had come none too soon, as the enemy's forces, flushed with the belief of accomplished victory, were already advancing across the valley of Young's Branch and up the slope, where they had encountered for a while the fire of the Hampton Legion, which had been led forward towards the Robinson House and the turnpike in front, covering the retreat and helping materially to check the panic of B's routed forces. As soon as order was restored, I requested General Johnston to go back to Portici, the Lewis House, and from that point, which I considered most favorable for the purpose, forward me the reinforcements as they would come from the Bull Run lines below and those that were expected to arrive from Manassas, while I should direct the field. General Johnston was disinclined to leave the battlefield for that position. As I had been compelled to leave my chief of staff, Colonel Jordan, at Manassas, to forward any troops arriving there, I felt it was a necessity that one of us should go to this duty, and that it was his place to do so, as I felt I was responsible for the battle. He considerately yielded to my urgency, and we had the benefit of his energy and sagacity in so directing the reinforcements towards the field, as to be readily and effectively assistant to my pressing needs and ensure the success of the day. As General Johnston departed for Portici, I hastened to form our line of battle against the oncoming enemy. I ordered up the 49th and 8th Virginia regiments from Cox's neighboring brigade in the Bull Run lines. Gartrell's 7th Georgia I placed in position on the left of Jackson's brigade,